Hello, in this lesson we're going to be creating our Blueprint Pawn class that we'll be using throughout the rest of the series. And we're going to create our Game Mode class that's going to set up our default classes that will be used when playing our game. First though, let's take a brief look around our level. So we have a nice star field, we have a planet off in the distance, and even a sun. And we have this area here, and kind of think of this as an arena. These are going to be the blocks that we'll be able to fly our ship around at the end of the series. These blocks are surrounded by this yellow box. This is a light mass importance volume. Basically what this does is it tells the engine this is the area that's most important for lighting. So spend the most time doing the lighting here. So anything outside of this importance volume gets just a single pass of lighting, whereas things inside of it will get multiple passes. So this is going to be the highest quality lighting, which is perfectly fine because our planet way off in the distance doesn't really need very, very detailed lighting because we're never going to get close to it. And the reason we're never going to get close to it is we have this pink-purple box around our whole level. This is a bounding box. Now this is a hollow bounding box, so if we see in our details panel it's checked as hollow. The reason it's hollow is that we want to be able to be inside of it and not be able to get out. So that's why we need it to be hollow. If it wasn't hollow, then we would have not be able to actually be inside the bounding box. And it will cause some odd issues with the physics system. So this is basically a way to prevent our player from flying all the way to the planet or all the way to and through our Starfield skybox. So now let's go ahead and create the blueprints we need to define our game. So we need to first create a blueprint folder inside of our content browser because we're going to be making several blueprints, and it's always a good idea to organize everything in your content browser. So inside of this blueprints folder, let's first create our game mode. So click on Add New Blueprint Class and click on Game Mode. Let's go ahead and call this BP_Flight Sim Game Mode. Now that may seem like a really long name. I typically use longer names like this because I want to make sure that when I name something, I know exactly what it is just by reading the name. And there's two reasons for this. One, a lot of the times all you'll see is the name when you're selecting something. You want to make sure that you're being very descriptive in that instance, but also if you're looking at these files in File Explorer or Finder on Windows or OS X, you only see the name of the file .uassets. You don't know if it's a game mode, you don't know if it's a blueprint or a texture or a material or anything else. So it's good to go ahead and have a name that when you read it, you know exactly what it is. And you can also do that as well by making sure things are in proper folders. So you can kind of assume that anything in a texture folder or a folder called textures is going to be a texture. So we've made our game mode. Now let's go ahead and make our pawn class that we'll be using to create our ship. So go ahead and click on Add New again and Blueprint Class. Now I want to take a moment and talk about why we're using pawn and not character. So most of the templates that are provided with Unreal Engine 4, like the first-person template, the third-person template, the top-down template, and a couple other ones, they all use a character blueprint as the primary pawn that the player is controlling. The reason they use a character blueprint is this comes with a movement component that allows the character to walk and run and jump and crouch and a whole bunch of other really cool things for moving the character around. This is great if it's an actual character that you'll be needing to walk and run and jump and etc. But in our case, we're wanting to create a spaceship, and spaceships don't walk or run or crouch, at least not traditionally. So in that case, we don't need the movement component that comes with our character class blueprint. We just need to be able to have something that can be possessed or controlled by a player controller and that can receive input from the player. So in this case, we want to use a pawn. So we'll click on pawn. Let's go ahead and call this BP_ship pawn, and this will be our pawn blueprint that we'll be creating our ship within. Now there's a couple other things we need to do. First, let's go ahead and click Save All, and in the Save Content menu, a box that comes up, go ahead and click Save Selected rather. So we want to make sure all of these blueprints are saved. Now that we've done this, let's go into our game mode, and you'll see we have this odd looking sphere here. That's just a default scene root. We're actually not going to do anything inside of this game mode other than adjust its class defaults. And the reason is a game mode actually holds all of the classes that make up your game. So everything from the pawn you're going to be using to the HUD, player controller, the spectator class, the player state, and the game state. So in this case, we want to change our default pawn class from the default pawn to our BP ship pawn. That way, anytime we're using this game mode for our game, the pawn that we'll be using by default is going to be our ship pawn that we just created. Go ahead and click compile and save. Now I want to show you something interesting. We have our game mode open and it looks like a normal blueprint, right? We have our construction script and our event graph and our viewport, and we have our components and our My Blueprint tab. Everything's here. If we close this and then go and actually reopen it immediately, you can see it looks entirely different. Perfectly normal. This is something that started happening in Unreal Engine 4.7. What this is doing is the editor has seen that this is a data-only blueprint, meaning there's no script, no variables, nothing was done inside of the construction script, inside of the main event graph. There's nothing in here code-wise. It's just data. Basically, all this is, it's saying, okay, you have just set your default classes, so I'm just going to show you the class defaults for this blueprint. I'm not going to show you the full editor. And that's because, if you noticed before, we had this really small window in the corner to set all these settings. But now that the editor sees, oh, you're only adjusting these defaults, I'm just going to show you that. So if you ever wanted to actually add script to your game mode, you can open the full blueprint editor by just clicking the link at the top. I just wanted to point that out in case it was a little jarring to you seeing that it was that different. So let's go ahead and close that out. Now, we have our game mode using our ship pawn, but we need to tell our game level to use this game mode. So how you do that is going into Settings and World Settings. And in World Settings, there's a Game Mode section and a Game Mode override. So let's go ahead and click on that and say BP Flight Sim Game Mode. Now we're set up. So now when we play our game in this map, it will use this game mode. Now, one other thing is always a good idea to do. If you have a single game mode that you're probably going to be using for more than one map, so for example, if we're going to make another level, like another arena for our ship to fly around in, we're going to use the same game mode, then we would need to go and make the map and then keep resetting this override game mode to the right game mode. But we can actually save ourselves some time by telling the editor what the default game mode should be for any new maps. So we can go ahead and click Edit and into Project Settings, and then go down to Maps and Modes, the second from the top. In here, there's a default mode section, and we can actually change this from game mode to our BP Flight Sim game mode. So that way, any new map we make, it will actually have the default game mode already set for us. We don't have to worry about it. Two other things I wanted to mention. One is, another thing that you can do in the Maps and Modes section of your settings is set the default map for the whole game and for the editor startup. So this is really nice so that, well, the editor startup one is really nice because this allows you to, let's say you're working on level 3 of your game, and whenever you open the editor you want to just go ahead and jump right into level 3, then you can go ahead and set your level 3 as that map that the editor starts into. The game default map, this is the map that is loaded whenever the game starts. So this is usually your main menu, not always, but usually. So this, in this case, we've actually set both of these to our space test map, which is the only map in this project. So that's why they're both set that way. Last thing to mention is if you open this section here in our default modes, there's a selected game mode section, and you can see our pawn, our HUD class, our controller, and our game state. These are ones that you can set by default for your whole game. If you change one of these here, that will be changed in whatever game mode is selected. So for example, if we actually said, well, default pawn is actually none, if we were to go back and open our game mode, you can see it's actually set to none here. So it's just a good thing to look out for, that if you change this in another place, then it'll be changed everywhere. So even if we went to our world settings here and said, well, actually, we really do want our ship pawn to be our default pawn class, if we go back into our game mode, you can see it changed back. So just know that anytime you go to adjust these, that they're all linked back to your game mode. It will adjust what's in the game mode. So let's go ahead and pop back over to our map tab, click Save All, so everything gets saved. And notice our map has been edited. That's because we overrode its game mode. So make sure you always save your map after overriding the game mode. Go ahead and click Save Selected, and that'll be it for this lesson. So in the next lesson, we're actually going to create a blueprint interface so we can have objects in our game world communicate with our pawn.